Hey everybody, my name is SPAZ, and I'm a CD junkie. On this episode of CD Junkie, I'm going to be discussing an artist that I've been a fan of for 35 years. His name is Robert Stephen Moore, better known as R. Stevie Moore. He is a legend in the underground cassette culture. He is the Godfather of Home Recordings, DIY, lo-fi. Before Sebado, before Guided by Voices, R. Stevie Moore was recording and releasing cassettes. He has released vinyl and CDs over the years, but basically his catalog consists of roughly 350 to 400 albums, and obviously most of those are on cassette. What I'm going to show you are things that are on CD, and as I go through these, I'm going to be also telling you a little bit about my feelings about R. Stevie Moore. But I always like to start by telling how I got into an artist. Now, back in the late 70s, I'd flipped through records at Licorice Pizza, and I came across this album called Delicate Tension by some scribble R. Stevie Moore or something or other. And but I didn't know what it was, so I passed on it. And it wasn't until a few years later that I started reading about this guy in Trouser Press magazine. Ira Robbins was a big fan, and he'd talk about this genius pop singer-songwriter, lo-fi, records all his stuff in his bedroom. It's cassette only, and I'm thinking, cassette only? Oh, never mind, because every cassette I ever owned got eaten by the cassette deck. The little tape heads would suck it down, and I could never fix them. So I never really would buy cassettes. So I felt kind of bummed out. This is about 1982, 83. When I first started reading about him. So I felt kind of bummed. I thought, I'm never going to hear this guy because it's all cassette. Well, then I go to Aaron's in Hollywood, and I'm flipping through the new import albums, and I stumble across a 2-record album on the New Rose label called Everything You've Always Wanted to Know About R. Stevie Moore, But Were Afraid to Ask. This 1984 album, which is here on CD, courtesy of Cordelia Records. This 2-record album, which is now a 2 CD set with bonus tracks. This was my introduction to R. Stevie Moore. Was he melodic pop like Shoes? Some of it is. Yeah, some of it is. Was he crazy kooky like Zappa? Yeah, some of it is. Was he influenced by the Beatles and Todd Rundgren and artists like that? Oh yeah, definitely. But he was a completely unique character. Thing about R. Stevie Moore is he approaches music from the inside out. He's often deconstructing tried and true pop formulas and rewiring them, and everything sounds like R. Stevie Moore. This collection there's so many different genres he covers, and he approaches them all with a unique musical perspective. I mean, he successfully tackles every genre because he honors the foundations that they were built on, but he rearranges the furniture to suit his needs, so to speak. And this is a fantastic collection. You're going to hear the quirky and the odd and the crazy and the beautiful and the wonderful, and it's all here. This, in my opinion, would be the first album to really get into R. Stevie Moore with Everything You've Always Wanted to Know. And for a guy like me who had been searching for R. Stevie Moore music, I finally discovered this. Now, of course, it was later on that I discovered that there were other LPs that had come out before. So we're going to start going through those. Phonography came out in 1976, very limited edition. This is the CD version on, I think it's Flamingo Records, which is Stuart Mason's label. It has bonus tracks. And what this does is it pulls from his cassette recordings from the early to mid-70s. In fact, most of these compilations, most of all these are all pulled from cassette recordings from the late 60s up until, whenever these things came out. But mostly 70s and 80s. But Phonography was a unique, wonderful album. Now, is it top 40? No, it's not. I mean, remember, he doesn't have glossy, overproduced records because, he's recorded in studios, but a bulk of his material is actually recorded in his bedroom. I mean, he tackles rock and country, alternative and punk and folk and new wave and Americana, experimental, avant-garde, sound collage, and there's a lot of great power pop in there too. But it's not conventional recordings. It's all coming from this unique musical perspective. He is uniquely and distinctly our Stevie Moore. Then in 1978 came the album Delicate Tension. This is the one that I saw in the record bins at Licorice Pizza many, many moons ago, 1978, 79 or so. This is a new CD on Cordelia Records. And they put the Stance EP on there and some bonus tracks as well. Now, our Stevie Moore's influences, Beatles, Beach Boys, Rundgren, Zappa, all the greats, top 40, country. He's got a lot, his dad was Bob Moore, who was a famous bass player in Nashville. And he's played with everyone from Elvis to Bob Dylan. But our Stevie went down a different path. And, I'm really quite glad he did, because he's really a unique artist that needs to be heard. This album, Plaque, I think this was 1980. This was sort of an upgrade. He recorded in a small studio. And this version has some bonus tracks on it. And this is great. It focuses a little bit. Our Stevie pretty much records he gets up in the morning, he says, I'm going to write a country song, and then he writes and records a country song, power pop, then punk. He can cram all the stuff into one album, and most people's heads would be spinning if you're used to the gloss of top 40. But our Stevie Moore really, really takes it to the next level. He's very talented, and yeah, he's not for everybody, but I think everybody should hear him. If that makes sense. And then, of course, came everything you've always wanted to know about our Stevie Moore. And I believe that was 84. And I believe that same year, What's the Point came out. Another collection of home recordings. Now, the thing, when I start talking about these collections, you kind of want to get all of them, because they don't all pull from the same 20 songs. Whoever compiles it, they put their choice songs on there. And sometimes the same 10 songs may be on all the compilations, but that leaves another 5, 10 on each collection that isn't anywhere else. The following year came out Verve, which has some great pop, but also a lot more experimental weirdness that I've come to love from our Stevie Moore. He can be avant-garde, he can do spoken word, so it's not going to be all just straightforward pop music, but it's always intriguing, always riveting. But that is the Verve album from 1985. This is on Cordelia Records. Cordelia's doing a great job in reissuing the R. Stevie Moore, by the way. The packaging looks beautiful, and with bonus tracks, they sound great. Now, the big turning point for R. Stevie Moore, he went back into the studio in probably 85. But by 1986, he released the album Glad Music. Boy, is that not an homage to the Beatles or what? Glad Music is filled with great songs, just absolutely stellar songs. And this Cordelia Records version, of course, has bonus tracks. This is the ultimate version that you're going to want to own for sure. Interesting thing about this, there's a Beatles theme that, goes through some of the other CDs that you'll see that I talk about. But this one's interesting because there were 2 Beatles songs that were rumored to have been recorded but never released. One was called Colliding Circles, and the other was called Pink Litmus Paper Shirt. I can barely say that. Pink Litmus Paper Shirt. And they were rumored to have been recorded by the Beatles. Of course, somebody had just made it up, and it turned into this big, rumor. It was probably somebody's sick joke. Beatle fans back then, before the internet, would just eat everything up. So anyway, what our Stevie Moore started thinking is, if the Beatles didn't write Colliding Circles or Pink Litmus Paper Shirt, I will. So on the original Glad Music, he included a great song called Colliding Circles. And then on this Cordelia version with bonus tracks, the very last song is Pink Litmus Paper Shirt. So, you may not have those songs out there by the Beatles, but now you have them by our Stevie Moore. And this is real fun. It's poppy, it's strange, it's kooky, beautifully melodic. Some of his greatest songs, like Don't Let Me Go to the Dogs and Why Should I Love You and Part of the Problem. Great, great album. He followed that up with an album called Teenage Spectacular, another album that came out originally on New Rose, and this has been reissued by Cordelia. And this is another great collection of songs. There's Some of it's a little more experimental than Glad Music, the previous album, but still it's a great listen. Lots of fan favorites on that album. Teenage Spectacular, our Stevie Moore. Oh, here's this compilation, another Cordelia Records collection called Our Stevie Moore, 1952 to 19 question mark. Well, our Stevie's gone way past the 19 question mark, thank goodness. And there's, well, of course, bonus tracks. I think this was originally a cassette collection, and then Cordelia put it out on CD. And then in 1990, New Rose had a subsidiary called Fan Club, and what they did is they put out Our Stevie Moore Greatest Hits. Read that cover title again. That's right, Greatest Hits. It's the only time I'm ever going to be able to say that in my videos. Anyway, this compiled songs off of Everything You've Always Wanted to Know, Glad Music, and Teenage Spectacular. And this was actually, I believe, the first R. Stevie Moore CD. First one in existence. But then 3 years later, in 1993, came Contact Risk. Another collection of early home recordings and songs from other releases. Now remember, there's so much to hear by R. Stevie Moore. 350 to 400 cassette albums, and then maybe like a couple dozen CD compilations, and then vinyl. There's a lot to listen to. So what I'm showing you is what I own. I haven't been able to track down more than this, but Cordelia Records is really doing a great job in reissuing them. So I'll be keeping an eye on that record label. It's cordeliarecords.co.uk. Guy who runs it, Alan Jenkins, is also a talented artist, and he releases other stuff, but he also reissues the R. Stevie Moore stuff. Anyway, this is not on Cordelia, but this is The Future is Worse Than the Past. It's a compilation that came out in 1999. And as I've said before, a lot of the compilations draw from the same time period, basically early 70s through 80s, but there are variations. This compilation, Nevertheless Optimistic, came out in 2003. Another fine collection. Here's a collection that's very interesting. If you are a fan of the Phonography album, there's an album called Thoroughly Yours, Phonography 2. And what this does is it doesn't pull from Phonography, it pulls from some of the cassette albums that from that same time period. So there's a great, and this is on Cordelia as well. Great collection. And then Cherry Red Records in the UK decided to hop on the R. Stevie Moore compilation bandwagon, and they released Meet the R. Stevie Moore, yet another homage to Los Beatles, with the logo up there, Meet the R. Stevie Moore. And again, another great collection. That's a later picture of R. Stevie. And they followed that up with another compilation of home recordings called Me Too. And you're not going to go wrong with any of these compilations because they are unique and they do have different material. So, I have all these, and there's still stuff out there, tons of stuff I'm looking for. But his R. Stevie Moore Cassette Club that he started in 1982, it turned into R. Stevie Moore CDR Club in 2005. So I have to grab a couple albums that I need. Anyway, here's another collection called Lo-Fi High Fives. This came out in 2012. Nice collection there. Following year, another collection, Personal Appeal. I mean, he releases so much material through his cassette club and CDR club that, it's nice to go through and get cherry-picked compilations so you can decide, if you decide you wanted to buy some R. Stevie Moore cassettes or R. Stevie Moore CDRs, which you can get at rsteviemore.com, by the way, you will be able to, these are basically, I guess little samplers of what's available. Some of the stuff, like I said, can be a little too experimental. Some people just want to hear the pop songs, and these feature those and so much more. Here's another compilation called Once and For All. This seems to feature a lot of exclusive stuff there, not a lot of tracks that are on the other collections. Here's an interesting one. As I said, the Beatles theme going through here. Here's actually an album he recorded in '75, released on cassette. It is called, here on CD, it's called R. Stevie Moore Reforms the Beatles. And this is chiefly instrumental versions of Beatles songs. Now, but when I say instrumental versions of Beatles songs, it's not like listening to Jason Faulkner's Lullaby ones or listening to George Martin's things. No, these are the, wonky, eclectic, eccentric R. Stevie Moore interpretations, which means that they are fun to listen to. They may not replace, your Beatles remasters or your Beatle box sets, but they are definitely fun to listen to. He even tackles Abbey Road Side 2. It's a little condensed, but it's unique. I mean, sometimes, you go, wow, that sounds really pretty, or that sounds really haunting. And then other times, you're going, well, God, I got to listen to that with my head tilted sideways because it sounds a little odd. And that's the magic of R. Stevie Moore. He's always going to surprise you. It doesn't matter if you think you know what he sounds like just by what I'm talking about, because you're going to be surprised. Anyway, a few years ago, he made an album with Jason Faulkner, from Jellyfish and The Greys and The 3 O'Clock. And this album is called Make It Be. And they tackle some older R. Stevie Moore songs, but it's fresh, exciting. There's a lot of great versions, like I Hate People is a popular one here. But Make It Be, great album from R. Stevie Moore and Jason Faulkner. He's collaborated with other people. I don't have those CDs, unfortunately. He's collaborated with Alan Jenkins from Cordelia Records. He's collaborated with Yukio Young and Ariel Pink and Jad Fair. He even did a song with Dave Gregory from XTC. He's collaborated with a lot of other people. Generally speaking, he's a multi-instrumentalist, and he plays all the instruments on his albums, which make them even more exciting and more unique. But he does occasionally have people come in. Anyway, here is World War IV. This is a collection of later R. Stevie Moore recordings. A lot of spoken word and experimental, and some pop songs, and everything mixed together. This is actually a 2 CD set. Folds out and looks yummy like that. And then finally, the last CD I'm going to show you is Afterlife. I bought this online, and they failed to tell me that it had a big sticker on it, so that annoys me. But this came out on Bar None Records, and it collects like the best of his studio recordings from the 2000s and like 2003 to 2015 or something like that. But a lot of great songs. That song Pop Music that starts us off is fantastic. I mean, if you buy this Afterlife, this is studio recordings, you're going to love it. This Glad Music, Teenage Spectacular, Plaque, those are more studio things. A lot of the other ones are home recordings. Either way, you're going to get a plethora of great, wonderful music, because he truly is an inspiring artist. Because throughout his career, he hasn't got the attention he deserves, but he's out there making music. And finally, there's a documentary coming out called Cool Daddy-O, which I'm really anxious to see, and it tells the story of R. Stevie Moore, and it will give you more insight into the artist himself, and I am really looking forward to checking that out. And I hope that you enjoyed this. Check out rsteviemore.com, check out Cordelia Records, cordeliarecords.co.uk, and definitely look into R. Stevie Moore if you want to get into the cassette recordings, and really get a grasp on just the wide variety of music that he does. Definitely check out everything you've always wanted to know about R. Stevie Moore, but we're afraid to ask. And anyway, that is it. I appreciate you hanging out with me for a little while and talking R. Stevie Moore. My name is SPAZ, and I'm a CD junkie.